They say love makes people human. Schopenhauer thought it made them foolish. Behind every soft promise, every trembling confession, he saw not romance, but nature's invisible hand guiding the species forward. To him, attraction was not beauty, it was biology disguised as poetry. What you call love, he called illusion, a trick played by the will to life. And in that single thought, he stripped human connection down to its coldest form. The mind wants meaning, but the body wants survival. Schopenhauer believed those two motives never align. The man thinks he is choosing a partner for love, comfort, or shared values. Yet underneath, the instinct that drives him has one silent mission: to reproduce the most favorable version of himself. That is what he meant when he said we are slaves to the will. You do not fall in love because you understand someone. You fall because something older and deeper inside you calculates that this person will continue your bloodline in a stronger form. The mind invents stories to justify it later. That is why, in his view, most relationships begin with intensity and end in conflict. The energy that once felt like passion slowly reveals itself as the hunger of the species. When that hunger is satisfied or denied, the illusion collapses. The same person who once seemed divine begins to look ordinary. Schopenhauer saw this shift not as tragedy, but as nature completing its work. The will to life no longer needs its mask once its purpose is fulfilled. He observed that men and women approach this illusion differently. Men chase the appearance of youth and fertility, women the appearance of stability and strength. Neither choice is moral or personal. It is strategic. Each gender, he said, evaluates the other as an unconscious investment. The man looks for physical signs of reproduction. The woman seeks protection for her offspring. Behind every word of love, he saw a silent negotiation between these instincts. No one escapes it. The clever only hide it better. That is what makes Schopenhauer's view of dating so cold. He did not believe in compatibility as most people define it. He believed in balance, in how one person's weaknesses attract another's strengths to form a more favorable offspring. That is why, he noted, opposites often attract. The shy are drawn to the confident, the short to the tall, the quiet to the bold. The will uses these pairings to correct genetic imbalances. Your preference is not free choice, it is strategy coded in desire. He warned that those who take romance at face value will suffer the most. Because when the illusion fades, they believe they have lost something sacred. In truth, they have only lost the instinct's disguise. That is what he meant when he said love is a deception that nature employs for her own ends. You think you are serving your happiness, but you are serving the species. The pain that follows broken love is not punishment, but withdrawal. The body's reaction when its biological mission fails. He saw marriage as the final trap, a contract built not for passion, but for practicality. To Schopenhauer, the institution existed to bind two people long enough to fulfill nature's purpose. Once the child was born, the desire between the parents would fade because its function was complete. He observed that those who marry for love often discover regret, while those who marry for reason endure with quiet dissatisfaction. In both cases, the will wins, humans lose. What does this mean for those living today? Schopenhauer would say nothing has changed. Only the language of deception has evolved. Modern dating still runs on the same primitive program. Lust disguised as love, manipulation disguised as connection. People project their emptiness onto others, searching for completion that biology never intended to provide. That is why, he wrote, genuine peace cannot be found in relationships. It can only be found in detachment, in silencing the will that constantly craves. He advised avoidance not from bitterness, but from clarity. To him, the wise person understands that desire enslaves the mind. Every attachment tightens that chain. To love deeply is to give the will another way to hurt you. That is why he spoke of compassion toward others, but suspicion toward passion itself. The same instinct that builds families also destroys them. The same love that creates life also breeds jealousy, control, and despair. The only escape is to recognize love for what it is. A biological spell. See through it, and you control it. Fall for it, and it controls you. Imagine a man who spends years chasing the ideal woman. He studies her, pleases her, sacrifices himself to keep her attention. When she leaves, he feels his world collapse. Schopenhauer would tell him he was never in love with her. He was in love with his own projection. The pain he feels is not heartbreak, but ego death, the will's rage at being denied its goal. The lesson is not to avoid love entirely, but to understand its true nature. Only then can you use it without being consumed by it. This detachment does not mean indifference. Schopenhauer valued empathy for its ability to transcend self-interest, but he believed romantic love rarely achieves that level of purity. It begins as fascination and ends as fatigue. Each person secretly resents the other for not fulfilling the fantasy the will created. That resentment, multiplied across generations, explains why human relationships are so often filled with conflict. Everyone is acting out nature's hidden script, unaware of their role in it. He called beauty the bait nature uses to continue life. The more beautiful the face, the stronger the illusion. Yet beauty fades because nature no longer needs it after reproduction. What remains is what most never learn to see: the person behind the instinct. Few reach that point without disillusionment. Those who do often lose interest in the game entirely. They begin to see attraction as a passing current and not a destination. That recognition frees them, but it also isolates them. For once you see the mechanism, the magic dies. Schopenhauer's dating advice, if spoken plainly, would sound cruel. Do not trust what you feel. Do not believe what they say. Understand that every expression of love hides an agenda older than civilization. Yet within that cruelty lies power, because once you strip away illusion, manipulation loses its hold. The one who understands motive can no longer be easily controlled. The man who sees desire as instinct becomes immune to seduction. The woman who recognizes flattery as strategy stops falling for it. Clarity is the true armor. His teaching is not to avoid love, but to see it as a biological function that should never govern the mind. Enjoy it, but never depend on it. Approach it with awareness, not faith, because the moment you romanticize it, you become its prey. He would say that the happiest people are not those who are loved the most, but those who have learned to need love the least. To them, affection becomes choice, not addiction. In the end, Schopenhauer's view reduces human romance to a brutal simplicity. Every confession, every sacrifice, every heartbreak is the same pattern repeating itself. The will to life ensuring its survival through illusion. Once you see that, the tragedy becomes predictable. Yet that awareness, cold as it sounds, is liberation. You no longer search for eternal happiness in another. You search for understanding in yourself. That is the beginning of control. The end of the game is not to find the perfect partner, but to free yourself from the illusion that you need one. When illusion fades, most people panic. They cling harder, talk softer, and try to resurrect what never truly existed. Schopenhauer would call that the will's last attempt to preserve its disguise. Once the instinct realizes its trick has been exposed, it turns desperate. The person you once called loving begins to manipulate, not because they are evil, but because their instincts cannot accept the loss of control. It is not love that drives them. it is survival. And that is why understanding human attachment gives you power. When you see emotion as mechanism, you stop being its victim. He believed that the one who feels less always dominates the relationship, not through cruelty, but through emotional economy. The less invested you are, the freer you become. The one who fears loss is already enslaved. The one who accepts it gains advantage. Schopenhauer viewed detachment as the highest form of intelligence because it removes the will's leverage. People are easy to manipulate when they believe something external defines their worth. Remove that belief, and you remove their control over you. To him, the tragedy of love is that it begins as fascination and ends as revelation. The more clearly you see someone, the less mystery remains, and the less desire survives. What lovers call boredom is simply the death of illusion. The biological impulse fades once its mission is impossible or achieved. That is why the same intensity that once blinded you transforms into indifference. Nature withdraws its bait, and the individual is left staring at emptiness, wondering where the magic went. But Schopenhauer would say the magic never existed. You only stopped hallucinating. He understood that most people are not looking for partners. They are looking for relief. They use others to escape their own emptiness. But emptiness cannot be filled by another person. It can only be disguised. When that disguise breaks, resentment begins. Each side blames the other for failing to maintain the illusion. The truth is that both entered the relationship already incomplete, hoping the other could finish the work they avoided in themselves. This is why, in his analysis, love stories always end in disillusionment or dependency. Either you see the truth and detach, or you remain blind and controlled. In the modern world, that same pattern repeats through endless cycles of attraction and rejection. People confuse stimulation for connection. They chase intensity because stillness feels unbearable. Schopenhauer would say that the constant search for new partners, new experiences, new validation is the will disguising its hunger as self-discovery. The more you chase, the emptier you become, because what you are chasing is not another person. It is the temporary silence of your own craving. His philosophy was not romantic. It was surgical. He wanted you to cut through illusion until nothing false remains. When you understand that desire is not personal, manipulation becomes transparent. The words meant to seduce you sound mechanical. The games meant to trap you lose their excitement. The same instincts that once ruled you become tools you can observe and use consciously. To live this way requires discipline. It means you do not chase affection, you study it. You do not beg for attention, you analyze its cost. Every emotional reaction becomes data. Every attraction becomes a test of control. Schopenhauer saw freedom as distance, the ability to see your emotions without obeying them. The average person reacts. The aware person pauses. That pause is power. It separates instinct from choice. He believed that when you master that moment of pause, you gain control over both yourself and others. Most people reveal themselves in moments of passion or rejection. They show their weaknesses without realizing it. The cold observer collects those details. He never argues, he listens. He never chases, he waits. Because patience, to Schopenhauer, was the purest form of dominance. The one who can delay reaction controls those who cannot. He described women as instruments of the species' design, not villains but executors of nature's command. Their beauty, he said, blinds reason in men so that the will can continue its cycle. He spoke of this not with contempt but with resignation. He understood that both genders are trapped by the same law. The will uses each as means, not ends. The tragedy is mutual. Men are enslaved by desire, women by the need to inspire it. Both perform roles nature wrote before they were born. Recognizing this, he believed, is the first step toward liberation. Rejecting it entirely is the next. Imagine two people meeting at a cafe. Their words sound casual, but underneath every gesture, a negotiation unfolds. She evaluates his confidence as a marker of stability. He measures her tone as a sign of submission or challenge. Their laughter is camouflage for instinctual assessment. Schopenhauer would watch this and see not romance, but biology performing its ritual. The irony is that both believe they are choosing freely, unaware they are executing ancient programming. That blindness is what he wanted to expose. He did not want people to stop loving. He wanted them to stop lying about why they love. His idea of dating advice would not fit in any modern guide. He would not say be kind or be confident. He would say understand motive. Know that every compliment hides calculation. Every rejection hides fear. Every promise hides need. Once you accept that, you stop expecting purity from a process that was never pure. You learn to interact without illusion, to see beauty and still recognize the machinery behind it. That does not make you cold. It makes you awake. The greatest danger, he warned, is confusing intensity for meaning. Just because something feels powerful does not mean it is profound. Often the most overwhelming emotions are the most manipulative. The person who makes your heart race may not understand you at all. They might simply trigger the instincts that biology wired into you. The wise person studies that feeling before surrendering to it. They ask, what is this sensation serving? The species or my sanity? Only one answer leads to freedom. To Schopenhauer, love was nature's most successful form of deception. It convinces intelligent beings to obey primitive urges while believing they are following destiny. That is the essence of the unseen truth, that every romantic story hides the same biological script, and every heartbreak is the moment you realize it. Once you grasp that, you stop searching for ideal partners and start cultivating self-control. You realize that solitude is not loneliness but resistance. It is how you keep the will from turning you into its puppet. His philosophy sounds harsh because it removes comfort, but it also removes confusion. When you no longer expect fulfillment from others, disappointment loses its sting. You begin to interact with people out of curiosity, not desperation. Attraction becomes experiment, not addiction. You learn to enjoy the game without believing its lies. That is the cold law of mental strength, to remain untouched by illusion while still moving through it. To care without depending, to connect without clinging, to love without forgetting it is a biological transaction dressed in poetry. He would tell you that happiness in relationships is not about finding the right person, but managing your will correctly. You can date, marry, even love deeply, but only if you remember what drives you beneath those actions. The moment you forget, the will takes over. You begin to chase, to please, to fear loss. That is when pain returns. The wise person keeps one truth in mind. You can never possess another without losing part of yourself. The will demands ownership. The mind seeks understanding. Only one leads to peace. So Schopenhauer's dating advice, stripped to its essence, would sound something like this: observe desire as you would a storm. Do not fight it. Do not worship it. Just let it pass. Never let the will convince you that completion lies in another. Never let flattery replace logic. Never let pleasure disguise control. Because once you can see through the game loses interest in you. That is the final victory. Not to dominate others, but to become unreachable by manipulation. He would say that love is not evil, it is indifferent. Nature cares only for continuation, not comfort. You are free only when you understand the truth completely. When you stop demanding permanence from impermanent things, no one can break you again. You can walk through attraction, rejection, betrayal, and loss with the same calm expression. The will may whisper, but the mind no longer obeys. That, he would say, is what it means to become mentally cold, to look at love and see biology, to look at pain and see programming, to look at yourself and finally see the puppet cutting its strings. So when you leave tonight, remember this. Every heartbeat you've ever mistaken for love was the will reminding you that you belong to it. Every tear, every obsession, every silent hope that someone will finally see you. That was the ancient program whispering its command. But you are not bound to obey. The moment you see it, the illusion cracks. The will loses its mask, and what remains is something rare, a mind that feels but does not serve, that loves but does not kneel. That is the unseen truth Schopenhauer left behind, not to escape desire, but to expose it. Because once you see the machinery behind affection, you no longer chase ghosts. You walk through the fire of longing and come out clean. The cold mind does not break. It simply watches the world burn its illusions and stays silent.